Okay, good evening, everybody. I hope everybody had a great Shavuos. Today's Monday night, so it's Parshas in Chutz La'aretz. It's Parshas Naso. It's interesting because Yom Tov was Friday and Shabbos. So in Israel, they only have one day Yom Tov. So only Friday was Shavuos, and Shabbos was a regular Shabbos. So they began reading Parshas Naso, and we're going to be reading this Shabbos, the coming Shabbos, Parshas Naso. And in Israel, they're going to be reading Parshas Baloischa. So they're going to be a week ahead of us, and I believe they catch up by Matus and Masei. So it's a very interesting difference between what's going on. But by us, it's Parshas Naso. So let's discuss a little bit. Parshas Naso, number one, is the longest single Parsha in the Chumash. It's 176 psukim. It's brought down in Sfarim, a very interesting point. The longest Parsha in Chumash is Parshas Naso. The single longest Parsha is Parshas Naso that has 176 psukim. The longest parak in Tillim is Kuf Yutes that has 176 psukim, and the longest tractate of Gemara is Baba Basra that also has 176 pages. So it's interesting. Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim and Gemara, by the way, each one of them has not Nevi'im, Ksuvim, but they have the longest Parsha, the longest Parak of Tillim, and the longest Masechta, tractate of Gemara is 176 psukim. Okay, now at the end of last week's Parsha, in Parshas Bamidbar, Hashem says, Naso Yisreish Beinei Kahas. Now Levi had three kids, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. Those are the names of the three kids. Now, Kahas was not the oldest, but Kahas was the most prominent. Number one, Moshe Rabbeinu came out from Kahas, and Kahas was given the honor in the Mishkan to carry the Aron and the Menorah and the Shulchan. So they were the ones that carried the holiest things of the Beis Hamikdash. And that was in Parshas Bamidbar. It says, Naso Esreish B'nei Kahas literally means count, but literally the word Naso means elevate the head of Kahas amongst the Levim. And then it says what their role is. The beginning of our Parsha, Parshas Naso, it says, Naso Esreish B'nei Gershon Gamheim. You should count or elevate the head of Gershon also. And they were given their particular avodah what to do. Then the Torah says the third person, B'nei Merari. It doesn't say Naso Esreish B'nei Merari, like it says by Kahas and by Gershon. It just says B'nei Merari. And so the question is, why by Gershon and Kahas does it say elevate their heads, which means counting, but in the deeper sense, elevate them? Versus by B'nai Merari, it just says Merari. It doesn't say anything about elevating them. That's number one. Okay. And also, it's interesting, the order of Levi's children was Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. Now, we know the Medrash says that why does it say Naso by Gershon and Kahas? Because they carried the more important things of the Mishkan. Merari only carried the heavy boards. They carried the ones that carried the heavy boards. So the Medrash said, which is the Rebbe asks, it's very difficult to understand, because Merari carried the boards. That was the foundation of the Mishkan. So the Medrash seems to imply Gershon and Kahas were important. Merari were not so important. So how does that work as far as B'nai Merari? Okay, so let's explain it. Let's go off a little bit and explain what's going on. The Jews, we know, because of the chet of the spies, ended up staying in the Midbar for 40 years. They were supposed to go into Eretz Yisrael right away. Because the spies came back, the Meraglim spoke Lashon Hara against Eretz Yisrael. Hashem said, Yom Lashana. The spies were there for 40 days. Hashem said, Yom Lashana, you're going to be punished a year per day. So we're stuck in the Midbar for 40 years. So the question is, I understand Hashem's punishing us not to go into Eretz Yisrael. Okay, that we understand. They spoke Lashon Hara about Israel. We can't go into Eretz Yisrael. But why did Hashem have to dump us in a desert with Nachash, Sodov, Va'akram, with snakes and scorpions and dangerous animals? Why did Hashem, okay, we're punished not going into Eretz Yisrael. But why did Hashem punish us that we had to be in a midbar, in a desert? And not only stam a desert with dangerous animals, snakes, scorpions, and all many types of animals. So the answer is like this. What does Hashem really want? Hashem wants a Jew, and this is what we have the ability for, especially we just got the Torah. When we got the Torah, the Jews were blessed with the ability of making a home for Hashem. We're the chosen people to make the home for Hashem. Now, what does Hashem really want? For whatever reason, Hashem wanted, like the Alter Rebbe says, on a taiva, on a temptation, you can't ask why. This is what he wanted. Hashem wanted a dira b'tachteinin, a dwelling place in the lowest of places. Now, you can have a city which is civilized, people live there. That's not a midbar. That's not tachteinin. It's not the lowest of all places. It's a civilized place. You can have a field. It's also not the lowest of the low because things grow there. You cultivate land, there's beautiful gardens. It's beautiful. And it nourishes the people. It grows fruits and wheat and everything. Then you have a midbar. The lowest of all levels, spiritually, is a desert. And especially, like we said, a desert that has snakes and scorpions. So what does Hashem want? Hashem wants the Jew to transform that spiritual desert, not only physical desert. Hashem says, yes, it's not enough that 40 years you didn't go into Eretz Yisrael, but I want something even greater to accomplish. I want the Jews to take a spiritual desert, not only a spiritual desert without anything, with dangerous things in it, snakes, scorpions, and so on. And I want you to make the Mishkan a home for Hashem in that midbar. A home for Hashem was the Mishkan in the desert. It wasn't in the city, it was in the desert. That's where Hashem wanted to make the Mishkan. So now the question is, how do we do it? How do we make this dwelling place for Hashem? So who worked in the Mishkan? The tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi was the tribe that worked in the Mishkan. The Rambam says, and this is the Rambam the Rebbe always quoted, Leishevet Levi Bilvad. It's not only the tribe of Levi that Hashem designated to work in the Mishkan. Any Jew who gives of himself to create this dwelling place for Hashem, the Rambam says they're like Shevet Levi. Every Jew who dedicates his life to make this Mishkan, the dwelling place for Hashem in this world, the Rambam says you're like Shevet Levi. So who is the people? Who are the people that make this desert, the world which is a desert, making it a dwelling place for Hashem? Shevet Levi. Every Jew is Levi. Now, what does that mean? Levi, we said, had 3 kids, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. The fact that they were named Gershon, Kahas, and Merari means that that is the Avodah of the tribe of Levi. Every Jew's Avodah is divided into 3 children, 3 branches, Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. What do these things mean spiritually? The Rebbe explains as follows. Gershon, the oldest son, and that's why he was the oldest, even though Kahas was holier than Gershon, they carried the holier things. Moshe Rabbeinu came out of Kahas, but Gershon was the firstborn. Why was Gershon the firstborn? Because the first avodah of every Jew to become a Levi, to work in Hashem's Mishkan, to build the world as a Hashem's home is the concept of gerushin. What does gerushin mean? Gerushin. Gerushin means to divorce. Gurusha is a divorcee. Gerushin means the act of divorce. What does it mean, divorce? The beginning of a Jew's avodah is, as the Pasuk says in Tehillim, we say Rabbi Shabbos and davening. Sur meira ba'asei teiv, bakish shalom v'ratzvei. 3 branches. Turn away from evil, do good, and seek peace. And chase it. Gershon represents the Jews' avodah. If you want to build a Mishkan for Hashem, you have to divorce all worldly temptations from yourself. If a person will be overly indulged in worldly temptations, then they're into themselves. There's no room for Hashem to be in there. If a person wants to really, really connect to Hashem, it's only by connecting yourself to loving Hashem. Because, like the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, loving Hashem and loving world are opposites. The more you love Hashem, automatically the more you hate world. The less you hate world, that means you're loving Hashem less. The first thing, as the Pasuk itself says, Sur meira, a Jew has to first turn away from evil. You can't put on clean clothing if you're full of mud. The first thing a Jew needs to do is remove themselves from evil, meaning get rid of the evil. Gerushin. You need to divorce yourself from worldly things. The next child is kahas. What does kahas mean? There's a pasuk later on in Chumash, when Hashem speaks about Levi, it says, "V'loi to him yikhas abim," nations will gather. Kahas means gathering. What is the second avodah of Levi after you get rid of the evil? You divorce the evil. The second thing, as the pasuk says, asay teiv, we need to do good. What does it mean, doing good? When a person does a mitzvah, they're actually taking the sparks that Hashem put in the physical leather, the physical wool, the physical candle, those sparks of Kedusha, and the Jew is sanctifying themselves, meaning they're gathering the sparks of Kedusha that Hashem put into the physical world, into the objects that we do Torah mitzvahs with. In simple language, it means asay teiv, doing an abundance of mitzvahs. That's the avodah, the second avodah of the Jew. The first avodah is gerushin, sur meira, turn away from evil. The second level is asay teiv, which is kahos, gathering the sparks of kedusha. But then there's a third level, and that's called Marathi. What is the level of Marathi? Marathi comes from the word bitterness. What does it mean, bitterness? The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, there's atzvus, which is sadness and depression, which is complete evil. It should be eradicated from the person's life. And then you have Meritus. Meritus is bitterness. Now, the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya, what does Meritus, what does bitterness mean? It means as follows. Not, God forbid, a person is worthless. Depression means I'm no good, I'm worthless. That's anti-Jewish. Anti-Chassidus for sure. Meritus means like this. What is the bitterness of the person? Alter Rebbe explains. Realizing, like it says in Shulchan Aruch, before you daven, it's a mitzvah to meditate into godless hakel, v'shiflus ha'adam, the greatness of God and the lowness of man. What is Meritus? Meritus is something very positive. Meritus is like this. I realize how great Hashem is and how low de facto human being who is with an animal soul, and we need our physical necessities, and we go crazy if we fast, and we go crazy if we don't sleep, and all that. But what does Meritus accomplish? Meritus then accomplishes, Alter Rebbe says in Tanya, that the person realizes I could do one mitzvah and can connect that as low as I am, I can connect to that super great Hashem. So Meritus is very, very positive. But Meritus doesn't only mean that bitterness. Meritus means also humility. Because like we said, what is Meritus? The person realizes how low they are in comparison to Hashem. So Meritus is actually the level of bittul, of humility. When a person turns away from evil and a person does good, there's a third child of Levi, and that is Marathi. What does it mean? A person should not think because they do a lot of mitzvahs or because they know a lot of Torah, they're great. And they lack the level of bittul, they lack the level of humility, so then they cannot connect to Hashem. In order to connect to Hashem, like it says, you need to have that level of humility. So Gershon and Kahos are speaking about positive traits that a person has, turning away from evil and doing good. So the Rebbe explained by those two avodas of Gershon and Marathi, Gershon and Kahos, because you're talking about understanding, you're talking about Sur Merah Seiteit. Over there, the Pasuk says, Naso Yisreish, you have to elevate. You have a talent for learning, you have a talent for spreading Yiddishkeit, you need to elevate it. Marathi doesn't have to be elevated. Marathi is the ultimate level of humility. So therefore, by Marathi, the Posse can't say Naso Yisreish. When you pick up humility, I should proud myself that I'm humble. Then you're not humble. So these three children of Levi actually is the whole concept of the avodah of the Jew to create a mishkan in the midbar. Until Mashiach comes, we are all in a midbar. And we are not only in a physical midbar, we're in a spiritual midbar full of, like we said before, snakes and scorpions and all dangerous animals. What is the role of Shevet Levi, or as the Rambam says, every Jew who commits himself to this is a Levi? The role of a Levi is to have Gershon, Kahos, and Merathi. Meaning, how do we create a Beis Hamikdash, a Mishkan, a sanctuary for Hashem within us, and through in us, it spreads all over the world, it becomes contagious all over the world. That is first by having the level of Sur Merah. Secondly, doing a seitei. And thirdly, the main thing is the level of bittul. We mentioned there was a very famous story that Baal Shem Tov asked one of his Talmidim, I believe it was the Rabbi Kitzis, who was a big student of the Baal Shem Tov. He asked him to blow shofar for him on Rosh Hashanah. And Rabbi Kitzis was very excited. He learned all the kavanah, all the spiritual, halachic, Kabbalistic, and he had notes. Okay, he wrote it in notes. You shouldn't forget it. And he was very excited. He was going to blow shofar for the Baal Shem Tov with those kavanah. Hashem has a great sense of humor. The morning of Tkiyah Shofar, he couldn't find the notes. He couldn't find any of his notes. And he was relying on the notes. Because, when you rely on your head, then it's like today, nobody knows phone numbers because they rely on their phone. Years ago, people used to know phone numbers. Today, nobody knows phone numbers. Why? Because you rely on the phone, so you don't even bother remembering. He relied on his notes. He came to Tkiyah Shofar, he was going crazy. He didn't have the notes. And because of that, he was extremely broken when he blew shofar. He was extremely broken when he blew shofar. After davening, the Baal Shem Tov called him in and said to him like this. In a massive mansion, a massive castle, there are many doors with locks. And each door has its own lock and key. And this key opens this door, and another key opens that door. You don't have one key that opens everything. And then he says, then you have a master key. The master key opens all doors. And the Baal Shem Tov said to him like this: all this kavanah and all this Kabbalistic stuff that you worked on to get, he said, those are individual keys to individual doors. Some doors it opens, some doors it doesn't open. He says, your humility, your Meritus, your bittul that you had when you blew shofar, that was the master key that opened all the doors. So your shofar blowing was better this way than with all the Kabbalistic meanings. And that's the mila of Bnei Merari. And therefore, the Rebbe explains, that's why they carried the boards. What was unique about the boards? The Gemara said, the Pasuk says, Ate shitim aimdim. They stood, they were upright. In other words, the Mishkan the boards had to be vertical, not horizontal. It says, what does aimdim mean? The Gemara says in many places, Ein amida elo loshen bittul. Standing is like somebody older than you walks into the room. You stand up. It's a sign of humility. Standing is a sign of humility. Keroshim, why was Merari's job to carry the Keroshim? Because the Keroshim symbolized humility. And because of that, like we'll maybe get to soon, the boards were called Keroshim, out of Atzi Shitim, that we're going to talk about next with the Saita. There were Keroshim, which is the letters Sheker, and Shtus means foolishness. The role of the Mishkan's boards was transforming Sheker, falseness of the world, to Keroshim, Keresh, of the Beis HaMikdash, of the Mishkan, and to transform foolishness of the world to foolishness of Kedusha. So therefore, Merari really wasn't, it was very great. And it wasn't that he was not good, therefore didn't say Naso as a Reish. But it means because of his bittul, he was even greater. Okay, now in this Parsha, it also talks about the Saita woman. Now, the Saita is a woman that the husband it fears that she's committing adultery with somebody. Okay, so then is the husband warns her and says, "Al tistri im ishplain, do not go into a private room with this and this person." Then, if there's witnesses that it happened, you bring the woman to the kohen, and she has to drink the saita water. And if she's innocent, she's blessed. If she's guilty, she dies. That whole saita thing. Now, we know we just celebrated Shavuos. Shavuos was the marriage between Hashem and the Jewish people. And Hashem warns us in the Ten Commandments, Lo yeh lecha elokim acherim al panei. Do not have any other gods. Hashem said, Hashem is the husband, the marshal of Shir Hashirim. Hashem is the husband, and we are the women, the wives. Bnei Yisrael is not only got children. Sometimes it's interesting. I don't want to elaborate on this now, but in Shir Hashirim, the Jews are called wife. They're called biti. There's the Jews by Matan Torah were called Hashem's wife, Hashem's daughter, Hashem's sister, and Hashem's mother. These are all various different relationships, not for now, that Hashem and the Jews have between them. So what does Hashem warn us in the Aseret Dibros? Hashem is warning the wife. He just got married. He's warning, don't marry anybody else. Don't fool around with anybody else. Okay? You can't fool around with anybody. That's the warning of a Satan. Okay? So, what? In fact, the Jews committed adultery. They worshiped the eagle 40 days after Matan Torah. And Hashem warned them, Okay, but now the question is like this. Hashem is telling the Jews, don't hide with that other man, other gods. But There's a very big problem. And the problem is that you can't hide from Hashem anywhere. The Posse says the husband tells the wife, don't hide with anybody. Don't conceal yourself with another man. How, and meaning Hashem is telling the Jewish people, don't conceal yourself with another man. How in the world can a Jew conceal himself with anybody else if Hashem is all over the place? In fact, there's a pasuk that says, Im yisasid ish b'mistarim. If a man will hide in the hidden places, Hashem says, Ani lo yarenu. I'm not going to see him. So the question is, how do we have the sight? In fact, by the ego, it's very interesting. If you notice, some people, Moshe Rabbeinu gave him water to drink. In Kisisa, there's a whole story that we learned already many weeks ago. Some people were killed for committing adultery with the ego. Some people were given water to drink, and that was like sight the water. But the question is, you can't hide from Hashem. So how is it possible that a Jew can be hiding from Hashem to have the whole concept of sight? So again, the Rebbe explained very interestingly. There's a Gemara in Saita that says like this: Ein ani v'hu yichelim ladur. Hashem says about a person that has haughtiness, I cannot coexist with you. Ein ani v'hu, I and this person with ego, yichelim ladur, cannot live together. That's what the Gemara says in Saita. What's the simple meaning of this? It's very simple. A person who is full of himself literally has no room to put Hashem in them. There's no room for Hashem. Hashem says, if you're so full of yourself, then I can't, there's no room for me. You have to let me in. There's no room. The Gemara says, and it's brought down more in Sifri Musar and the Chassidic Sfarim, the whole cause of sin is ego. What causes a person to sin? And that's why the Yetzer Hara is called Se'er Shebe'isa, the dough, that the yeast that makes the dough rise. Chametz represents sins. Matzah represents humility. Why does matzah, what's chametz? The evil of chametz is that it rises. It's so full of himself. Matzah is humility. So Hashem says, what's the source of all evil? The source of all evil, it says very clearly, is ego. Hashem says, don't eat it, but I like it. So I'm going to go eat it. That means, in my opinion, I'm more important than Hashem, or my desire is more important than Hashem. Hashem said, that's negative commandments. Positive commandments, Hashem says, do a mitzvah. And the guy comes along and says, you know, I'm too lazy. I want to sleep. Spiritually sleeping, physically sleeping. I want to sleep. That's again, you come first. If Hashem comes first, then you're going to keep Torah mitzvahs. If I come first, then it's not. So what's going on? So the bottom line is, all Avedas are really coming from, it comes from Gaiva, haughtiness. And therefore, where can a Jew hide? Where is Hashem not being felt? Of course, he's all over. Where is Hashem not being felt? In a haughty person is also full of themselves. If they're full of themselves, there's absolutely no room to have Hashem in there. So therefore, that's, the Rebbe explains, that's the stira, that's the concealment where a Jew can hide something, so to speak, and commit a sin. Because with ego, Hashem says, I cannot exist. So now the Rebbe quotes this Posse that we just said before, but the way the Baal Shem Tov interpreted. The Posse says, Im yisaset ish b'mistarim. Simply the Posse means, if a man will hide in the hidden places, you think b'ani lo yarenu? You think I'm not going to be able to see him? So the Baal Shem Tov said like this. It's remarkable. The way Chassidus turns everything negative to positive. The Baal Shem Tov said, "In Yisaset ish b'mistarim." If a man will hide, meaning they think they could run away from God, va'ani, Hashem said, I'm making that happen. Why? Because Hashem wants for the Jew to unconceal the concealment that they made. In other words, Hashem is making the concealment that we should undo the concealment. Hashem hides that we should go find them. That's Hashem's doing. And therefore there's a din that the husband can forgive the warning that he gave the wife before the Megillah was erased. The husband could say, forget it, I take back my warning, I'm not interested, I don't want it. Hashem, let's explain like this. There's a Posse in Verse Chanan. It says like this: Ubikashtem misham es Hashem Elokecha umatzasa ki sedershenu b'chol levacha v'chol nafshecha. The Posse says like this: you should seek out Hashem from there. Bikashtem misham, you should seek out Hashem from there. Umatzasa, and you will find Him. When you seek Him out with all your heart and soul. This pasuk tells us the whole purpose of life. This one pasuk, you should seek out from there Hashem Elokecha, you should seek out from there God, and you will find Him with all your heart and soul. There's a game called hide and go seek. And that's what the game of life is. Meaning as follows. Sham, Chassidus explains, Zeh, there's here and there's there. Zeh is Gilui. It's here. It's right in front of you. You see it. Sham over there represents concealment. You don't see it. Sham, it says in Chassidus, represents evil. There, it's not a revelation. It's not that. It's not a revelation of godliness. It's evil. And Hashem says, go find me. I'm hiding and go find me. What does that mean? There's a game parents play with little children. And we're God's little children, by the way. It's called the hide and go seek. What happens? The parent hides, and the kid has to go look for the parent. And when the kid finds the parent, the kid's all excited. He found the parent. So the shaila is, why does the parent have to hide for the kid to find him? Let him not hide, and the kid will see him. But then you don't have a game. What's the game? The game is the parent hides. The kid needs to go looking for the parent. But the game, and this is very important, the game is only a game as long as the child is looking. As long as the child is looking for the parent, the game is a game. The game's on. And then when the child finds the parent, it's a big simcha by everybody. But what happens? The parent hides, and the kid starts looking, and then he says, you know what, this is boring. And the kid goes outside to play, or goes onto his cell phone, or whatever. And meanwhile, the parent is hiding like a goylem, waiting for the child to look for him. And the kid stopped looking. You can imagine the pain that the parents have that the kids stop looking for them. And this is what life is all about. Hashem hides from us. He conceals himself from us. That's why you look in the world, you don't see Hashem openly. Without learning, you don't think there's a God. As Avraham Avinu's greatness, he realized this. We have to learn about Hashem. So Hashem hides. What is the purpose of Hashem's hiding? He says, I'm hiding because I want you, bikashta misham, I want you to find me. As long as a Jew is looking for Hashem, it's great. The problem is when the Jew stops looking and Hashem is waiting to find me, that's when the problem is. That's when it's very sad. Hashem himself created the concealment. In the Posse says, if a person will hide, and Ba'ani means Hashem says, I'm causing it. And that's the whole concept of Saita. Hashem warns us. But you know what? Hashem forgives us. He's Meichel. He forgives the concealment. Why? Because Hashem doesn't want us to be punished. Hashem wants us to look for him and find him and have a relationship with Hashem. And the more the parent hides, meaning the greater the concealment of godliness. And as generations now would regress, lower and lower and lower, closer to Mashiach, the more hidden the parent is, then the game is much more exciting. And when you find the parent, when it's hard to find them, that's when the ultimate simcha is by Hashem. And that's why Hashem, that's what he does. Okay, let's move on. At the end of the Parsha, it says, the last 90 psukim of the Parsha talk about the dedication that the Nesiim brought to the Mishkan. Now, it says in the Pasuk, each Nasi's carbon. 12 Nesiim. Each Nasi is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 psukim. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 psukim, each Nasi. They each brought seemingly the exact same carbon. Why does the Torah have to say the same thing 12 times? Why can't the Torah say, this is the carbon, and each Nasi mention, if you want all the Nasim in 1 or 2 psukim, and you save so much time from reading the Torah. And we know every word in Torah is important. We learn now halachas from one letter in Torah. Why is the Torah saying the same carbon over and over and over 12 times? So it's interesting. If you look at Medrash Rabbah, the Medrash goes to each Nasi's carbon the way it's spiritually different than the next ones. Physically, they all brought the same stuff. But the Medrash explains that each Nasi had completely different meanings in their carbon. So really, it's not Stam repeating the same thing. The Medrash says each Nasi had a unique level that his own carbon had. This concept, by the way, and why is it mentioned over and over again? So simply the Medrash says because each Nasi was different. In simpler English, because the Torah wants to show the preciousness of this gift of the Nesiim, of the leaders. What's the lesson from this? The lesson from this is a very interesting question. Years ago, they didn't ask it so much today, to my knowledge, than they did in the 60s. Those of you that are around in the 60s, when the whole revolution, anti-establishment, everything happened then. So when kids were learning about Yiddishkeit, one of the main questions they always asked, I want to be individuality. I want to be myself. How in the world do I have individuality if I'm putting on the same tefillin with another 15 million, 16 million Jews? Where do I have my own individuality? I want to connect to God as an individual. I want to do it my way. I don't want to do it because then everybody's doing the same tefillin. So where is me? I'm just one of 515 million. But this we see from the Nisim, this remarkable concept. And that is as follows. Outwardly, it's the same carbon. Every Jew could put on the same tefillin or light the same Shabbos candles. But the bottom line is, your tefillin is not my tefillin, and my tefillin is not his tefillin. Every person's putting on tefillin is different than everybody else's. That's the unique relationship between me and Hashem. Just like the Nisim, they all brought the same carbon, but each one was different. Every Jew can keep the same Shabbos. No two people keep it the same way. Every person, the male's over by mitzvah, put on tefillin. It's still not everybody. Everybody is different. And that's what the individuality of Yiddishkeit comes. And that's why it's so important. In order to connect to Hashem, it can't be my way. Why can't it be my way? Because I am a finite human being. I am a limited human being. And there's no way in the world that a limited human being can reach the infinite God. It's just impossible. So I can't create my way of connecting to Hashem. Because how can I connect to Hashem? I'm finite, he's infinite. The answer is very simple. Hashem says, I'm going to make the mitzvahs. When I make the mitzvahs, because I'm giving you the mitzvah, and I'm telling you this is what I want you to do for me. When you do it, you connect to the infinite Hashem. But the nefesh, the spirit of the mitzvah, the physical mitzvah is done the same. The same tefillin Moshe Rabbeinu put on, well, not necessarily. Same tefillin people after coming into Eretz Yisrael is the same exact tefillin we wear today. Why do I say Moshe Rabbeinu didn't wear tefillin? Because the two parshas out of the four is Shema and V'hoyim Shemaya, and that they got in the 40th year. So the Rishonim discuss what tefillin did they wear for the 40 years until they got the parsha of Shema and V'hoyim Shemaya. So many Rishonim answer that they wore tefillin with 4 boxes, but only 2 parshas in there because they didn't have the other 2 until the 40th year, and then they added the other 2. But anyway, coming back to this point is that every Jew has his own unique relationship with Hashem. My relationship with Hashem, yes, I do the same mitzvah you do, but I do it differently, and the relationship is different. And that's where the individuality of the Nisim come in, and that's where why the Torah repeats it over and over again to show that even though seemingly it's the same, but it's different. Okay, another interesting thing also in this gift of the Nisim. By the way, I want to mention before we finish, but those that come on Wednesday night, this Wednesday night is not going to be a class because here in LA, we're having a Kinnis Meritus, a Hakel gathering this Wednesday night in Moshe Gans Hall on La Brea as a chizuk, strengthening for all the events that happened in the recent weeks, the negative events that happened in the past. So Wednesday night is going to be a citywide gathering for men and women in Moshe Gans Hall on La Brea and Oakwood. So therefore there won't be a Wednesday night class. I'll mention it again, but right now anyway. Okay, at the end of the gifts, the Torah rounds up another gift that the Nisim gave together, and says, what did they bring? They brought this and that and that, and then they says like this. They brought Sheish Eglis Tzov, at the beginning. Sheish Esli Eglis Tzov. They brought 6 covered wagons. Okay, that was before in the Parsha. Okay, they brought like this. Sheish Egli Sav, they brought 6 covered wagons. They brought 12 cattle. Okay, so they brought the Nisim, chipped them together. So each one brought a calf, a buck or an ox, and 2 Nisim together bought a wagon. So there were 6 wagons with 12 animals, two animals per wagon. Okay, that's what Rashi says. They bought it together. That's the simple meaning of the Posse. So what did they do with the boards? So Moshe Rabbeinu says 4 of the boards he gave to Marathi. What was Marari's job in the Midbar? Carrying the heavy boards of the Mishkan. There are a lot of boards. Okay, the Gemara in Shabbos explains how they utilized the wagons to fit the boards on the wagon. And it was very, very complicated because they only had 4 wagons and so many boards. So the Gemara actually, they went crazy in figuring out, how the boards should lay on the wagons, that all the boards should fit onto 4 wagons. That's what the Gemara says in Shabbos. So the Rebbe in a famous Sikha asks a very simple question. And that is, there's a rule in the Gemara, Ein Ashiras b'makom aniyas, Ein aniyas b'makom ashiras. There's no poverty in the place of wealth. The Nisim were very wealthy. They were very wealthy. The question is, they couldn't bring another 6 wagons. They couldn't donate 12 wagons. That the board should be able to go on easier. The Levim wouldn't have to go crazy. They would have people standing between the wagons, make sure that they could have donated a few more wagons. And then the boards would have been put on properly and nicely. Why couldn't they just bring more wagons? What are they, cheap? The Gemara says that before an animal was shechted, okay, the Gemara says before an animal was shechted in the base of Migdosh, they gave it water to drink. Mashkin and behemah lefnei hashchita. The Gemara says, the Mishnah says, they would give an animal to drink before the shechita. Why? In case there was something stuck in the lungs and in the throat, and it would invalidate the shechita. So they gave it to drink, and the water would push it down, and the throat would be clear. So the Gemara says, what did they give the animals, the bulls or the sheep? What did they give it to drink from? Golden utensils. Solid golden utensils. So the Gemara asks, why in the world do you have to give a behemoth to drink from a golden utensil? You couldn't give an earthenware utensil, copper, silver, dafka gold. And the Gemara says, Ein aniyus b'makom ashiras. There is no poverty in the place of wealth. In Hashem's home, there is no poverty. So that strengthens the question. Why couldn't they just get more wagons? And the Rebbe explains a phenomenal lesson in life. From one side, when you need to accomplish something, money should not be an issue. You need to accomplish something. Since when is money an issue? There's a story, probably mentioned in the past. I heard it from Rabbi Costello, who ran the programs of what's called Sach in New York. He once wrote to the Rebbe, they had an option of doing 2 functions. One would be cheaper, but the other one would get more people to put on tefillin, but it would cost much more money. And he wrote to the Rebbe, which one should they do? And the Rebbe answered very sharply. The Rebbe said, what type of question is this? I mean, where are you coming from? More people are going to do a mitzvah. What is, since when does money count in this? So from one side, the opinion in Torah is when you need to do something, money is not an object. Money is not a limitation. You got to do what you got to do. At the same time, it's a big sin to waste even 1 cent. If it could do without it, then you don't do it, because then you're wasting something Hashem created. I'll never forget when the Rebbe used to leave 770 during Sukkot. If the light was on in the sukkah outside there's private sukkah outside 770, and the Rebbe was walking home, the Rebbe would turn around and say in Yiddish, "Ashad Yiddish Geld." Like, why are you wasting Jewish money? Why is the light on? Nobody's using it. From one side, when it comes to doing things that need to get done, money shouldn't be an issue. From the opposite side, if you don't need it, then you don't use it, which means as follows. Bottom line, 6 wagons were enough, and because they did it. It would have been more convenient. It would be more convenient if they had more wagons. Yeah, but those wagons could be used for something else. You're wasting a creation Hashem made. If you can get along by doing 6, yes, it would be harder. But bottom line is, you would be able to do it with 6. Then you don't need 7. If you're talking about accomplishing something, money is no object. And there's no anias in the place, there's no poverty in the place of wealth. But the Rebbe's lesson is, and this is such an important lesson, people have a tendency of wasting things. In life, we use a cup, we throw it out. 10 minutes later, you take a drink, get another cup. Why can't you just use the same cup and not throw it out? Or whatever it may be. Why do we have to waste things? We waste food. We take more food than we think we can eat, and meanwhile, we don't eat it, and then it goes to waste. It's mamash's biblical sin, what's called baltashches. We're wasting Hashem's creation. This is a lesson we learned from the Nasim with the Korbanos. The fact that 6 wagons was enough, it's a crime to make 7. It's more convenient. So that other wagon could be used for something else in Hashem's service. And that's the lesson from that Chanukah Samizbech. It's basically time, but in this week's Parsha, we also deal with Birches Koyanim, right before the Parsha of Saita. But it's just interesting that Birches Koyanim is it's right after the level of Saita. Right after the level of Parsha of Saita, then the Torah speaks about, or the Nazir really, the Torah speaks about Kreis Varchos B'nai Yisrael, okay? Because a Nazir is a very holy person. The Gemara says he sinned a little bit because he shouldn't be more religious than the Torah. The Torah says you can drink wine. Why is he abstaining from wine? But the concept of a Nazir is Kedusha and Birches Koyanim is Kedusha. And just to finish with this, the Rebbe said many times that every Jew really can do Birches Koyanim. Every Jew can bless. Because every Jew we read by Matan Torah, every Jew is Mamlechas Koyanim. Every Jew is a Melech and a Koyan. Second day of Sivan, Hashem said, Va'atem tili Mamlechas Koyanim v'goy kodesh. Every Jew is a Melech and a Koyan, and every Jew can bless everybody else. So Hashem should help us. We should all be blessed. Once again, those of you that know people that come on Wednesday that don't come on Monday, please, if you can tell them that there's no class this Wednesday because there's this gathering in Moshe Gansol at 8 o'clock. It'll be Mincha and then the gathering and then Meritus. So please tell the people that but there won't be a class in Mitzvah Shem, so we'll see you on the Zoom in Mitzvah Shem next Monday night at 8:30.
Where exactly is it Wednesday?
Thank you. Thank you.
On the corner of La Brea and Oakwood.
Thank you. God willing, I'll see you there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.